What up, though, y'all? It's your boy Shane G. We are here once again with another episode of Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Man, we've been causing a stir on the network this week. It's been a good time. It's been fun, you know what I'm saying? But we had some business to attend to, so let's get to it. Today, basically, we're gonna talk about the revolving door, right? We touched on it a little bit last time. What the revolving door is basically when people who are lobbyists, which basically is what we went over the whole last episode, what lobbying is. It's basically when lobbyists become members of the government, and then when they're done serving their term in the government, they go back to the industry that they were lobbying on behalf of. And then when they get done doing that job, they go back to the government, and then back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So I got an example of that for y'all today, and we're going to get to it. Let's go. So, according to Public Citizen, written by Craig Holman and Carolyn Esser, public officials are charged with creating policies or fulfilling duties that serve the public interest of the American people. Increasingly, however, these public officials are leaving government service to work for private interests, as well as their own, as lobbyists or strategic consultants on behalf of lobbying campaigns for special interests. This is known as the revolving door, in which government officials swing back and forth between public service and lucrative private sector employment. Again, that's exactly what I was just explaining. So that's like somebody who is a senator, you do your term as a senator, then you go work for the banking industry, let's say. Then after you get done, being in high level management at a banking firm or, at a bank for let's say 4 years or whatever, then you stop doing that, then you go back and then you run to be a senator again or a representative, or you get what I'm saying? So we're gonna get into the details of it in a little bit. We're gonna look at somebody's profile. So excuse me. The revolving door muddies the mandate of public officials, overlapping it with special and personal interests. Again, because your whole thing as a public official is to serve the public, right? So private interest shouldn't really have anything to do with that, but we'll see how they infiltrate. You know what I mean? The government's a lobbyist revolving door threatens the integrity of government in at least three ways. Public officials may be influenced by, excuse me, public officials may be influenced in official actions by the implicit or explicit promise of a lucrative job in the private sector with an entity seeking a government contract or to shape public policy. So, what that is, implicit or explicit promise of a lucrative job. So, it's basically like, yo, I am one of the CEOs of one of the big banks, right? And I don't want as much regulation on the banks. So, when I get done, or I can find somebody else to do this role for me for a little while, you know what I mean? I'm going to go and then I'm going to join the government. Or in this example, it's more so like if you're in the government and you pass laws that are favorable to the business or pass laws that are favorable to the industry that business is in, then what happens is, at the end of the day, like you can go to those people after you finish with your political career and you can say, hey, I passed this bill that looked out for y'all. I passed this bill that looked out for y'all. We got rid of this regulation that helped y'all out. You know what I mean? So it's like that's almost like their job resume at that point. You get what I'm saying? It's almost like their job resume when they like your job resume is all your work history. You know what I'm saying? Yo, this is what I've done, this is what I can do, this is what I'm good at, etc. That's essentially how they would come to these companies after they get done in government. They basically hand them that as a job resume, and it's like, yo, I got rid of this tax for you, we got rid of this regulation for you, this law made it easier for y'all to do this, Y'all made X amount of profit when we did this for y'all. Here's my resume. Can I have a job? You see what I'm saying? That's basically how that works. Moving on. Public officials turned lobbyists will have access to lawmakers that is not available to others. Access that can be sold to the highest bidder among industries seeking the lobby. See, that's another thing because of the fact that if I work with somebody for 6 or 8 years, there's going to be certain amounts of camaraderie that come with that. So now if I leave the government and I got all these friends that are still in the government, but now I go work for this private business, guess who has access to me? Or I'm sorry, guess who has access to the government on a way quicker, way easier, way more personable level than people in other industries who maybe didn't come from the government. You see where this kind of gets muddy and where the personal interests of people overlaps the whole reason that public service exists in the first place. Let's continue. The special access and inside connections to sitting government officials by former officials turned lobbyists comes at a hefty price tag, providing wealthy special interests that can afford hiring such revolvers with a powerful means to influence government unavailable to the rest of the public. And that's basically what we were just talking about a second ago. So the states offer some valuable lessons on how to best rein in revolving door abuses. To date, federal efforts to restrict the revolving door have been extensive but ineffective. So they have laws on the books, they just don't enforce them. That's pretty much what that means. As laboratories of democracy, the experiences of the states can teach the federal government the failures and successes of enforcing and creating stronger public protections. Again, those are those regulations that I'm talking about. That protections is a great word for it. A lot of people have demonized the word regulation, so maybe that's going to be the word that I use for them, because that is the proper framing of what a regulation is. All a regulation is basically a protection on behalf of the workers of a company or protection on behalf of consumers of whatever product that company is making. It just basically means the company's not allowed to lie to you about whatever they're making. They have to, agree to a certain standard when it comes to, taking care of the environment, when it comes to getting rid of, their waste and things of that nature. There's certain things basically that it's like, we all agree that these things have to happen. So the regulatory body is going to make sure that y'all are following the rules. You get what I'm saying? Because if you can save money by cheating or by skirting, some corners, you're going to do that. And we see that all the time. So that's the point of the regulations and the regulatory bodies, is to make sure that people are sticking. When it's not supposed to be a trust thing, like, hey, just do the right thing. No, we're supposed to check on you to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, that's why that's so important, to make sure that things like that don't happen. While the revolving door swings both ways between government and special interests in the private sector, and it is critically important to address the issue of the reverse revolving door of lobbyists and special interests moving into the government, the focus of this research is the government to lobbyist revolving door. This is the movement of former lawmakers and executive branch officials to jobs as well-paid advocates, often on behalf of the same special interests that previously had business pending before them, and who are able to use inside connections from their former place of employment to advance their interests of their clients. So what that is people who have never been in government ever, but they were high in business or in a particular industry. And when they retire from that or whatever, maybe not necessarily retire, but you know what I mean? Like when they step down from whatever official position they have within the company, a lot of times those people will join the government afterwards. So that way they don't even have to necessarily be official lobbyists. They're just gonna lobby on behalf of the industry anyway, because they're a part of it. You know what I mean? And now they're in government as well. So that's what they call the reverse revolving door. These people were never in government to begin with. They were purely in an industry, and then they joined the government essentially to help that industry. You see what I'm saying? So it's like that's corruption 101 right there. Like, because again, the point of government is supposed to be public service. These are public officials. None of these people are supposed to be getting rich in the government. You get what I'm saying? You can be rich independent of what's happening with the government, but you shouldn't be using the government to get yourself rich. And this is what we're seeing more and more of. Let's move on. As business interests have become more intertwined with government regulations and other official actions, the revolving door has become a bigger problem and so pervasive that it seriously threatens the integrity of the legislative process. One academic study of Congress members between 1976 and 2012 found a dramatic growth in the revolving door over just the last few decades. Relatively few members became lobbyists in the 1970s, fewer than 10% of both the House and the Senate. So the House of Representatives has 400 plus members, and fewer than 10% of them, and the Senate, which has 100 members combined, fewer than 10% were lobbyists. The trend accelerated dramatically in the 1990s and 2000s, with 50% of former House members. So again, that's at least 200 something people at that point, and 60% of former senators. So that's at least 60 people per Senate session, mind you, becoming registered lobbyists in 2012. A more recent study by Public Citizen found that in 2019, it was nearly 2/3 of former members of Congress have moved into jobs working for lobbying firms, consulting firms, trade groups, or business groups that seek to influence federal governmental policies. Think about that number, 2/3. That's 66%. If you round up, it's 67% because it's 66.66666 is that. What? How is this allowed? Well, we know how it's allowed. We went over that in the last episode and the episode before that. We know how it's allowed. Let's move on. Who's my guy right here? Who's Lloyd Austin? Well, Lloyd Austin is the current Secretary of Defense. Okay. Now, this is according to opensecrets.org. I just looked up revolving door, you know what I mean, on opensecrets.org. I looked it up. This was the first thing that popped up, was featured revolver Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense. So I said, let's look into Mr. Austin. Let's see what's going on with him. Okay. So these are all of the places that he's worked in his career. Let's look at it. 2021, he's the Secretary of Defense. 2021 till the current day. Cool. Raytheon. Interesting. How were you a board member of Raytheon for 1 year? Less than a year? That's interesting. I wonder what was going on with Raytheon around that time. Well, you know what? Let's figure out who Raytheon even is. Who is Raytheon? That's a better question. What is Raytheon best known for? Raytheon is a developer and manufacturer of radars, including AESAs, electro-optical sensors, and other advanced electronic systems for airborne, naval, and ground-based military applications. Okay. Let's look at their lobbying money. $5.9 million in lobbying in 2022 alone. The year is not over yet. It is October. And they have spent almost $6 million in lobbying. Raytheon Technologies directly $5.89 million of that. 10 grand for their subsidiaries. What is Raytheon best known for? Raytheon is a developer and manufacturer of radars, including AESAs, electro-optical sensors, and other advanced electronic systems for airborne, naval, and ground-based military applications. What am I implying here? What am I implying? Let's look back at the previous slide. Raytheon Technologies, Department of Defense, What did we just say that Raytheon does? Bunch of military stuff, right? What was he doing before this? Board member of Austin Strategies Group. I looked into them. They just do computer stuff. I'm not really tripping on them. They don't seem nefarious. Tenet Healthcare. Looked them up. They were making a lot of money during the same years that they spent the most money lobbying. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. I'll let y'all decide on that. But I looked it up, and in 2017, they ramped up their lobbying efforts. In 2017, excuse me, in 2018 is when he became a board member, and I noticed that their profits were higher during that time than any other time in, probably a 5-year period or so. And their lobbying, the amount of money that they spent in lobbying went down a little bit in the following years. Profits went down as well. I don't know if that's coincidental or not. You let me know. There were some tax laws and things like that that were very beneficial to a group like this that were passed around the same time. So again, I'm going to let you guys make all those conclusions yourself. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to put the information on the table and let you come up with it yourself. Come up with your own conclusion. Pine Island Capital Advisors, banking. Nucor Group. United Technologies, Department of Defense from 2013 to 2016, and everything he did before this from 1975 to 2013 was military. He was in the military that entire time, and he was, working his way up the ranks. So you have somebody who was in the military for 30 years, 40 years, 1975 all the way to 2013. So that's almost 40 years worth of just being in the military. Then you have the Department of Defense. He was working as a commander for 3 years. So his whole history was all military related. He jumps out, joins the private sector from 2016 to 2020 in various roles. He's a board member of United Technologies, a board member of Raytheon. He's a board member of Tenet Healthcare. He's a board member of Nucor Group. And then he becomes the Department of Defense Secretary of Defense. Why'd he leave the private market? That's what I want to know. Why'd he leave the private market? We see what Raytheon does. We know what they're about. Right? We see that. So let's keep going. What's been going on since Biden has taken office, right? A lot of shit going on in Ukraine. NATO versus Russia. Well, who's NATO? Let's start there. Who is NATO? Formed in 1949 with the signing of the Washington Treaty, NATO is a security alliance of 30 countries from North America and Europe. NATO's fundamental goal is to safeguard the Allies' freedom and security by political and military means. That's according to the NATO website, as you can see right there, nato.usmission.gov. So that's what NATO does. That's what we are. So it's 30 countries that basically all decided we're going to combine our militaries and, quote unquote, safeguard the Allies' freedom. But, how much freedom needs to be safeguarded when you run the world? It's not really your freedom that's at stake at that point. It's everybody else's. I digress. This is the breakdown percentage-wise, also directly from the NATO website, of the percentages of the countries that are funding NATO. These are the 30 countries that are in NATO. And as you can see, the United States and Germany pay the top highest amounts. Germany, 16.3444%. United States, 16.3444%. Next highest, United Kingdom at 11%. 11.2823%. Everybody else, significantly lower. Everybody else is less than 10% with the exception of France. So if there's 30 countries and 2 of those countries out of the 30 are paying almost, or they're paying more, they're paying close to 34% of the total amount to fund this thing, who do you think is going to be in charge? Who do you think is going to be making the decisions as to what goes on? If your organization needs me, you need me. You need my money to exist. There's no way that you can exist without my funding. That gives me a lot of leverage, does it not? Okay. The reason I bring that up is because everything going on with Ukraine and Russia right now is because of NATO's actions. It's because, yes, I'm not saying that Putin is great. I'm not saying he did anything, good or anything like that. What I'm saying is what he did was predictable based on NATO's actions. NATO was formed in 1949. Part of that agreement with NATO was, hey, Ukraine's not going to be part of NATO, and you're not going to move NATO any closer to the Russian border. You know what I mean? Like, y'all got to keep your distance, basically. Well, we've had NATO ships on the Black Sea for the last going on 10 years. There's a lot going on with that. But my point in bringing that up is United States pretty much controls NATO. So when they try to separate the two as if that's realistically not just an extension of the United States, it's really, they're gaslighting you when they're doing that. You know what I mean? That's a way of making you say, well, the United States isn't at war over there in Ukraine, and we're not battling Russia. That's Ukraine versus Russia. NATO, the alliance, is sort of helping them. Yeah, well, we control that alliance. So that's what's going on when you see somebody who has nothing but a military background for 30, 40 years, all of a sudden, they're board members of all these various business industries that don't have anything to do with each other, per se. You're a commander in the military. Why are you on the board of a healthcare company? Raytheon makes sense, at least because it's the same field. You know what I mean? Like, Raytheon makes military weaponry and technologies, and then you were a commander in the military. Now that goes together. What does healthcare have to do with that? What do any of these other industries have to do with that? That's where it becomes like, okay, what's going on here? What's the reason that you gave dude this job? That doesn't really make sense. Like, he doesn't have any experience in that area at all. He's a commander in the military. What does he know about healthcare? He doesn't know shit about healthcare. You get what I'm saying? So that's where this becomes an issue. That's where this is like, okay, let's look into this a little bit more. Why are they doing that? Oh, damn. Well, we are selling a lot of weapons to Ukraine right now. Okay. Let's put these pieces together. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help y'all put the pieces together. But I'm not going to do it for you. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to put the information out there, and I'm going to let you come to your own conclusion, because some things you just can't ignore. You know what I'm saying? Some things, if you frame it as a left-right issue, a Democrat-Republican issue, a progressive versus conservative issue, when you frame it that way, it instantly will turn people off to the whole rest of your argument. So if you notice, I try not to bring none of that up. All I do is present the information that's out there. You come to your own conclusion. You feel me? So that'll do it for today's episode, though, y'all. This is Shane G. This has been Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Like, share, subscribe. You know what I mean? We're informing people out here. We're just trying to drop gems. You know what I mean? And we'll catch y'all next week. Appreciate your time. Again, like, share, subscribe. Check the playlist out. So that's it, man. Peace. Love y'all.